Have Beth and Rip already started planning their revenge? Because after everything that happened in Dutton Ranch episode 6, I am more convinced than ever that Bula has no idea who she's dealing with. What looked like a fresh start quickly turned into a dangerous game of secrets, power, and betrayal. Beth is learning more than Bula realizes. Rip is earning trust faster than anyone expected. Carter is struggling with emotions he can't hide anymore. And just when it seemed like everyone was focused on surviving, a shocking discovery may have changed everything. If episode 5 was about settling into a new reality, episode 6 feels like the beginning of a war that nobody sees coming, Dutton Ranch. Episode 6 picks up with Beth and Rip continuing their new lives under Bula's control, but the longer they stay there, the more obvious it becomes that neither of them has accepted defeat. On the surface, everything appears normal. Rip works hard, earns respect, and proves once again why he's one of the best ranch managers around. Beth handles business matters with the same confidence and intelligence we've seen from her for years. To Bula, this probably looks like a victory. She believes she took two broken people and put them to work for her. She thinks they have no other choice, but I think she's making a huge mistake. One thing we've learned about Beth and Rip over the years is that they never stop fighting. Even when they lose everything, they find a way to survive. Episode 6 does a great job showing that. Instead of openly challenging Bula, they quietly observe everything around them. Every conversation matters. Every strange interaction gets noticed. Every secret becomes valuable information. Beth especially seems determined to understand how Bula built her power and what she's hiding from everyone around her. The most interesting part is that Bula doesn't appear worried. In fact, she almost seems proud of herself. She enjoys having Beth and Rip working for her. You can tell that it feeds her ego. She knows exactly who they are and what they accomplished at Yellowstone. Having them under her roof feels like proof that she's won. But that confidence may become her biggest weakness. Throughout the episode, there are several moments where Beth notices things that don't add up. Small details, strange comments, conversations that suddenly stop when she enters a room. None of these moments reveal the entire truth, but together they create a picture that feels very suspicious. Beth has always trusted her instincts, and right now those instincts are telling her that something is wrong. What makes this storyline so exciting is that Beth doesn't rush. She's patient. Instead of confronting people directly, she lets them talk. She listens carefully, she watches their reactions. She studies how everyone behaves when certain topics come up. The more information she collects, the stronger her position becomes. At the same time, Rip is experiencing something similar. The ranch workers quickly begin respecting him because they recognize his experience. Rip has always been the kind of man who earns loyalty through actions rather than words. He doesn't need speeches. He doesn't need attention. People trust him because he works harder than anyone else. Episode 6 highlights this perfectly, and that's where things become dangerous for Bula. While Beth is learning secrets inside the business, Rip is building relationships on the ranch. The longer they stay there, the more influence they gain. Bula may technically be in charge, but influence and authority are not always the same thing. Sometimes people follow the person they trust rather than the person who signs their paycheck. I also found it interesting how the episode continues exploring Bula's obsession with control. She wants to know everything about everyone. She wants every situation to benefit her. She wants people to depend on her. That strategy works most of the time, but Beth and Rip are different. The more pressure you put on them, the more determined they become. Another detail that caught my attention was the way Bula continues investigating Beth and Rip's past. She clearly believes they still have secrets she hasn't uncovered yet. And honestly, she's right. There are plenty of things buried in their history that could cause problems if exposed. The question is whether Bula is prepared for what she might find, because secrets work both ways. The deeper she digs into Beth's life, the greater the chance that Beth will uncover something about her. That's why I think episode 6 is quietly building toward a massive confrontation. Not a physical fight. Not yet. A battle of information. A battle where both women are searching for weaknesses while pretending to work together. And then there's the possibility that Jamie's shadow could return to the story. We all know that Jamie remains Beth's greatest emotional trigger. No matter how strong she appears, that wound has never completely healed. If Bula starts asking questions about him, Beth might struggle to hide her feelings. Even the smallest reaction could be enough to spark Bula's curiosity. The moment Bula senses that connection, she'll want answers. And if she starts searching for those answers, she may uncover truths that were supposed to stay buried forever. That's why I believe episode 6 is doing something very clever. It isn't rushing toward big reveals. Instead, it's slowly placing pieces on the board. Beth is investigating Bula. Bula is investigating Beth. Rip is gaining influence. Hidden secrets are getting closer to the surface. And every character seems to be moving toward a collision that feels impossible to stop. By the end of this part of the episode, one thing becomes very clear. Beth and Rip may have lost their ranch, but they haven't lost who they are. If anything, they're becoming more dangerous than ever. Bula thinks she brought 2 defeated people into her world. What she may have actually done is invite her biggest threat through the front door. Now, let's talk about Carter, because I honestly think episode 6 gives him some of the strongest character development we've seen so far. For a long time, Carter has been stuck between childhood and adulthood. He's old enough to make his own decisions, but still young enough to need guidance. After everything that happened with Dwight, it feels like he's standing at a crossroads, and whichever direction he chooses could completely change his future. The tragedy surrounding Dwight continues to haunt him throughout the episode. What makes it so painful is that Carter doesn't know how to process what he witnessed. He saw a man he respected lose his life right in front of him. That's not something a young person can simply forget. Even though he tries to act tough and pretend everything is fine, the emotional damage is clearly there. One thing I really liked about this episode is that it doesn't rush Carter's recovery. Too many stories solve emotional trauma in a single conversation. Dutton Ranch takes a different approach. Carter carries that pain with him. You can feel it in the way he talks, the way he reacts, and even the way he isolates himself from others. The problem is that Carter has always wanted to prove he can handle things on his own. He doesn't want people treating him like a kid anymore. That's why he often pushes Beth and Rip away. He wants independence, he wants responsibility, he wants people to see him as a man. But episode 6 starts teaching him an important lesson. Being strong doesn't mean carrying everything by yourself. As the episode progresses, Carter finds himself thinking more and more about Dwight. Questions begin filling his mind. Was what happened really justified? Could it have been prevented? Why do good people sometimes end up paying the highest price? These questions don't have easy answers, and that uncertainty only makes his pain worse. At the same time, his bond with Oriana continues growing stronger. Out of everyone around him, Oriana seems to understand what he's going through. She doesn't try to fix him, she doesn't tell him to move on. Instead, she listens. Sometimes that's exactly what someone needs. I have a feeling the writers are carefully building something important between these 2 characters. Whether it becomes romance, friendship, or something even deeper, their connection feels genuine. It's based on trust rather than excitement. And after everything Carter has been through, trust is probably the most valuable thing he can have. There are several moments throughout the episode where Carter seems close to opening up completely. You can see him struggling with his emotions. Part of him wants to talk, part of him wants to keep everything buried. That's a battle many people can relate to. What makes this storyline even more interesting is how it connects back to Beth and Rip. Even though Carter keeps trying to create distance between himself and them, it's obvious that they're still his family. Maybe not by blood, but certainly by choice. Beth and Rip have invested too much in him to simply stop caring. Beth especially starts noticing changes in his behavior. At first, they're small things, a different attitude, a quieter response, a distant look in his eyes. Most people wouldn't think much of it, but Beth isn't most people. She's incredibly observant when it comes to people she loves. And despite her tough exterior, she genuinely loves Carter. That's something I think viewers sometimes forget. Beth isn't always good at showing affection in traditional ways. She can be harsh, she can be intimidating, she can be brutally honest. But when someone becomes part of her family, she'll fight for them with everything she has. As episode 6 continues, it becomes increasingly clear that she's beginning to worry. The challenge is figuring out how to reach him. Carter isn't the same scared kid he used to be. He's growing up, he's developing his own opinions. He wants control over his own life. That makes helping him much more complicated. I believe this creates one of the most emotional storylines in the episode because both sides have good intentions. Beth wants to protect him. Carter wants to prove he doesn't need protection. Neither one is wrong. That's why their relationship remains so compelling to watch. Meanwhile, Rip finds himself in a difficult position as well. He understands Carter better than almost anyone because he remembers what it was like to be young, angry, and lost. Rip knows that some lessons can't be taught. They have to be experienced. Instead of forcing Carter to talk, Rip seems willing to give him space. That may sound simple, but sometimes giving someone room to breathe is the hardest thing to do. The emotional weight of Dwight's death also begins affecting how Carter views the world around him. He's starting to realize that life isn't divided into heroes and villains. Good people make mistakes. Bad people sometimes do good things. Justice isn't always fair. Those realizations are painful, but they're also part of growing up. And honestly, I think that's what this storyline is really about. It's not just about Dwight. It's not even just about grief. It's about Carter losing the last pieces of his innocence. For years, Beth and Rip have tried to give him stability. They've tried to build a future for him. But the world keeps reminding him how cruel and unpredictable it can be. The question now is what he'll do with that knowledge. Will he become stronger? Will he become harder? Or will he allow his anger to control him? Episode 6 doesn't fully answer those questions, but it definitely starts asking them. And that's why I think Carter's storyline could become one of the most important parts of the season moving forward. While everyone else is focused on ranches, power struggles, business deals, and hidden secrets, Carter is fighting a completely different battle. He's fighting for the kind of person he wants to become. And judging by everything we saw in this episode, that journey is only beginning. By the end of this section, I couldn't stop wondering whether Dwight's death will become the defining moment of Carter's life. Some experiences change a person forever. They create a dividing line between who you were before and who you become after. For Carter, this might be that moment. And if that's true, the choices he makes next could have consequences far bigger than anyone realizes. Now, let's get into what might be the biggest mystery of episode 6, and that's the complicated history between Everett and Bula. For weeks, the show has been dropping small hints about their past, but this episode finally feels like the moment where the truth starts getting closer to the surface. Not because the writers reveal everything, but because the cracks are becoming impossible to ignore. The first thing that stood out to me is how uncomfortable certain conversations become whenever Everett's name is mentioned. It's almost like everyone knows part of the story, but nobody knows the entire truth. Every time the subject comes up, people suddenly become careful with their words. And whenever characters start acting that way in a drama like this, you know there's something important hiding underneath. What makes this mystery so interesting is that it doesn't feel like a simple disagreement between two former partners. This feels much deeper than that. The tension between Everett and Bula carries years of history. There's resentment there, regret, possibly betrayal, and maybe even secrets that neither one of them wants exposed. Throughout episode 6, I kept getting the feeling that Bula isn't nearly as confident as she pretends to be whenever Everett enters the conversation. Around everyone else, she projects strength and authority. She wants people to see her as someone who is always in control. But certain subjects seem capable of shaking that confidence. And Everett appears to be one of them. The more I think about it, the more I believe Everett knows something that could threaten everything Bula has built. That possibility alone changes the entire dynamic of the season. Because up until now, Bula has been the one collecting information. She's been studying other people, learning their weaknesses, keeping herself one step ahead. But what happens when someone knows her weaknesses too? That's the question episode 6 begins exploring. At the same time, Beth's growing curiosity about Bula's past creates another layer of tension. Beth doesn't know the full story yet, but she's starting to recognize patterns. She notices the hesitation in people's voices. She notices the topics everyone avoids. Most importantly, she notices fear. Fear is often the strongest clue that a secret exists. The interesting thing about Beth is that once she becomes suspicious of something, she rarely lets it go. She keeps digging until she finds answers. Sometimes those answers help her. Sometimes they create even bigger problems. But either way, she refuses to stop searching. And that's exactly why I think Bula should be worried. Because while everyone else is focused on business operations and ranch responsibilities, Beth is quietly putting pieces together, piece by piece. Conversation by conversation, clue by clue. The episode does a fantastic job creating the feeling that a major revelation is coming. You can sense it approaching even though nobody says it directly. It's like standing outside during a storm. The rain hasn't started yet, but you can feel it in the air. That's the atmosphere surrounding Everett and Bula's storyline right now. One theory I keep coming back to is that whatever happened between them may have shaped the entire future of the ranch. Maybe decisions were made years ago that are still affecting everyone today. Maybe sacrifices were made that people regret. Maybe promises were broken. Whatever the truth is, it feels significant. Otherwise, the writers wouldn't be spending so much time building suspense around it. Another thing worth discussing is how this mystery connects to the larger theme of the season. So far, Dutton Ranch has focused heavily on hidden truths. Beth is hiding things, Bula is hiding things, several other characters are hiding things, and Everett may be carrying secrets of his own. The more stories overlap, the more obvious it becomes that the season isn't really about land or money, it's about truth. Specifically, what happens when the truth finally catches up with people who've spent years running from it. That's why I think Everett's role could become much bigger moving forward. Right now, he almost feels like a ghost from the past, someone whose presence alone makes people nervous, someone whose name carries weight even when he's not around. Those types of characters are usually important because they represent unfinished business. And if there's one thing television dramas love, it's unfinished business. Meanwhile, Bula seems determined to maintain control over every situation. But control becomes much harder when the past starts resurfacing. The problem with secrets is that they demand constant protection. Every lie requires another lie. Every cover-up creates new risks. Every hidden truth eventually finds a way back into the light. Episode 6 constantly reminds us of that reality. What I found especially fascinating is that Bula appears to understand this better than anyone. There are moments where she seems genuinely concerned about information getting into the wrong hands. Not terrified, not panicked, just aware. Aware that one mistake could have serious consequences. Aware that one person asking the wrong question could create problems. Aware that one forgotten detail could destroy years of careful planning. That's not how someone behaves when they have nothing to hide. And that's exactly why my curiosity keeps growing. I also can't ignore the possibility that Beth and Everett's interests may eventually align. Maybe not intentionally, maybe not immediately. But if both of them are searching for answers about Bula, their paths could cross in unexpected ways. Imagine how dangerous that combination would be. Everett potentially knows parts of the past. Beth specializes in uncovering hidden truths. Together, they could become a serious threat. Of course, that's just a theory right now. But episode 6 certainly lays the groundwork for something along those lines. By the end of this storyline, one thing becomes impossible to deny. The mystery surrounding Everett and Bula is no longer a side story. It's becoming one of the central conflicts of the entire season. Every new clue raises more questions. Every answer creates another mystery. And every episode brings us closer to the moment when somebody finally reveals what really happened between them. When that day comes, I have a feeling the consequences will affect far more than just Everett and Bula. It could change everything we think we know about the ranch, the people running it, and the future that's waiting for all of them.